how much more rich would life be if we savored every single moment? I define intentionality in simplest terms to be identifying how you want to feel and then taking incremental steps towards making that a reality. The challenge is if we never acknowledge that present moment and what's going well, it doesn't matter how good your life becomes. If you keep always focusing on there could be something better, nothing will ever fulfill you. And then you're just in that game of the illusion of when I get this, when this will occur, I'll feel great. And the problem with when is it either never comes, you just actually, your fantasies were too big, or it comes and then the illusion comes crashing down because you're just literally like, oh, it didn't give me what I wanted. One of the biggest mistakes people make is...
Finnian, thank you so much for joining us. I'm super excited to talk to you.
Same, Scott. We just had a little chat about your LIFE acronym, and I resonate so greatly with it. So I'm looking forward to our casual banter today.
Yeah, I figured you would. As I was, I get the pleasure of researching everybody that we have a conversation with, and it's so fun to get to know not only your work, but a little bit of the background and the life. You have a really interesting story, and I think your childhood and your background kind of shaped your journey in a little bit. And I'm just interested briefly in understanding the correlation between your childhood and your future self. And I know there's a lot of directions we can go in this, but I'm just interested in our audience having an understanding, because that was something that I found super intriguing as I was listening to it.
Yeah, so I think all of us have some struggles with childhood. It doesn't matter what environment you're brought up with. Unfortunately, we deserve unconditional love, and there isn't a single human out there who can just give that all the time, because we have our ego, that part of us that also wanted unconditional love as well. So that's what we're all struggling from the start in some regards. And effectively, my life journey was really to go after and go, well, how do I create that love? But I was not realizing that you can't create love from the external. It has to be completely self-generated and completely driven from your own internal source, and then connection to something bigger than yourself, some form of divinity. And I went on the typical pilgrimage of life and went traveling around the world, creating businesses, doing all those different things, to only one day wake up and realize, it doesn't matter what's happening on the external, I need to work on the internal. And effectively, I went on a deep explorative journey of understanding what does drive me. How have I been making decisions? Have any of the decisions I've made, are they actually what I want? Or was it from a perspective of a child who felt unloved or didn't receive the safety they needed, and that was driving a lot of decisions and a lot of situations that weren't really fulfilling me. And I got to a place where I created a very similar set of priorities. What really mattered to me, I focused on, how do I live a life that brings me peace, me love, joy? And I realized that we had to connect to some universal priorities. And if you listen to mine, they're very similar to yours. It's to love, to grow, to serve, to play, and to create. And if we live in line with those 5 priorities, we will be living a life of intentionality. We will be living a life full of passion and purpose, without really focusing on what we're doing, but rather how we're being in life.
It's interesting because I think so much of the journey of life, we can kind of wake up and find ourselves in a position where we're playing a part in the life that we thought we wanted. And I think I saw some correlation in your story to personal experiences in my own, where you know this, you have this vision of what you want to accomplish. Like I wanted safety, security. I wanted to provide for my family. I wanted to provide more for them than I had growing up, but not discounting anything that I had growing up, but just saying that there was definitely more that I was searching for. And you get to a point where you fall into a role and you're not quite sure why you're there. And then you have this epiphany And you've laid out these, I want you to go through these 5 things as well. But I mean, I just feel like there's so many people going through life right now that feel like they're almost a passenger in a car that's being driven by someone that looks and feels like them, but some days is not who they want to be.
You're totally right. And something else what came up for me there was I was reflecting back. So often we're focusing on what we're not getting. And instead, could we give what it is that we want? So at a very young age, as a little boy, I remember just reflecting, I will not be like this. Like, I will not be a parent like this, or all these different experiences. And it's coming to full circle because I'm about to have my first boy right now. And in some regards, I'm incredibly grateful for all the circumstances that my family life brought me up into, because now I get to give what it is that I didn't get. And maybe that was the whole life lesson. Like, maybe that's why I had to be in that scenario. And what incredible teachers my parents were in order for me to be this really loving and conscious parent. Now, the challenge is I ran with that in that direction, but a lot of people, they don't see that, and they focus so much on why I didn't get this, so then why should anyone else get it? And that's where we just keep passing on the conditioning, the coding in from one generation to the next. And it's something my friend often says about oxytocin, a hormone in our body, is that it can't tell the difference between coming and going. So if you want love, if you give love, you actually receive love. It's the same thing. So go out and give what it is that you're missing. Same with when you're leading teams. I just had this conversation with a client just then. I said, what is it you want from this offsite? And it was trust. And I went, okay, if you want trust from your team, what do you need to make sure that they trust you? Like, what do you need to give so there's no question? And there were certain things that they were withholding, and they were like, oh, I have to share that now. And I went, yes, because trust is trust. Truth is truth. You can't pick and choose.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people sometimes the people in our lives that want us to trust them the most are the ones that give you the least. Mm-hmm. And the expectation and the result are obviously eluding each other. So, and as you prepare to be a father for the first time with your son, I am sending my firstborn son to college in a week. So
wow. Beautiful.
I am it is a completely different scenario, and I can remember the feeling of being a new father. It's interesting, and I think correlated again to a lot of what you believe, because when I started my own company, I was in private practice as a financial advisor in a really what I call lifestyle practice for 15 years. And then in 16, I started my own practice, and it was more of an enterprise and a development and a big business. And we've had great success. But in that time, my back started aching severely. I was having all these internal issues, right? I go back to a moment in that where I'm like, wait, the last time my back was this sore and I couldn't function was about 1 month before my firstborn son was born. And I literally went back on my medical records, and I was trying to find like how they correlated. And what I was starting to piece together was how my body was screaming at me when I was stressed or concerned or suppressing some level of stress. And I was just moving along through life without actually being present in the moment and allowing it to come through. And I think you have plenty to say about this, but that was my firstborn son 1 month before he was born. Like, I remember laying on the floor, not being able to move. Like, my back was it had gone out, I'm using air quotes for those listening. Mm-hmm. And I started to realize that I have this inside battle where I do really well on the outside and on the mind, where I convince myself everything's fine. But internally, the body is screaming at me from the inside out. And so as excited as I was also nervous, and acknowledging that, and now going through the next phase and iteration. It's going to be a great experience for you. But I know you've got a lot to say, because this is so correlated to your message and a lot of the things that are in the book, Intentionality.
Yeah, there is, and it's about accessing a intelligence that we are not using most of the time to make better decisions. So something I like to say in business world is everyone's always focused on, oh, we don't have enough time. That's one of the common answers out there, whether it's them or their team members. And if we play that game, we're in a limited, finite game. So one of my statements is we don't need more time, we need to get better at decision making. And how we get better at decision making is we focus on leveraging energy over time. Now, there is an energetic source available to us that can help us make better decisions. We are often only using one part, which is our intellect, our conscious mind, which is has experience from different patterns and it looks at things in a logical way. But decisions aren't logical. We are all emotional based beings. There isn't a single person out there who's logical. Actually, when they say they're logical, all they've done is cut off half their consciousness. Like they're limiting themselves. So first, what we could do is to check in with our body and our feeling state to go, all right, how does this decision make us feel? And if you instantly get like a feeling of, oh, that feels contracting and restricting, maybe it's a sign, don't go ahead. And then you don't even have to waste any energy on exploring any of these decisions. And what was happening, what you said something about is you needed to acknowledge the feelings of stress. Yes, there's always the duality. One, of course, you're excited about being a father, but then also complete unknown. What am I going to do? What does this mean for my life? And if you don't acknowledge that part of you, it gets stored in our body, and then the body starts screaming for you to pay attention. And if we actually acknowledged those sensations and felt those feelings, perhaps the back pain may have dissipated. But what do? We think it's in isolation, and we just go, oh, something's happened there. So I now, whenever I get some form of injury or niggling thing, I go to it and I go, what are you trying to teach me? So my knee just started, I've never had any knee problems, and my knee just started playing up recently. And it's a little bit frustrating because it's beautiful weather in Aspen right now. I love climbing mountains, riding bikes, doing all these different things. But then I actually sat with it for a little bit and went, what do you want me to teach? What do you want to teach me? And I said, slow down. Right now is such a unique time to be with your partner, where only a couple of weeks from being pregnant, not moving as quick. So go at her pace. And I, every day, have just been walking with her, spending time with her. And it's been so spectacular, so special. And she always celebrates me going on an adventure. But she actually said, you know, it's been really nice you've been here the whole time. And I went, thank you, knee. Now I'm like, thank you, knee. What a gift. And my experience, rather than being in a negative state, because that's what happens normally with injuries, I could have compounded the mistake of the injury and made it so much worse, which then would have lowered my energy. Talk about that energy, the how you're showing up in life, which then would have potentially caused resentment for my situation, caused conflict in my relationship, not being as good at decision making in my business, and a little knee injury, which was trying to teach me to slow down, just would set off this chain of events of destruction. Now, it's all just perspective. It's all just a story. Everything is a story in our life. We create our own reality. So people be like, oh, what can the knee... is that guy just crazy right now? But who is better for that interpretation? I'm a lot better for that interpretation, and so is everyone else in my life. And now I'll have a positive experience of a negative sensation. And that's really what life is about. It's not about always just feeling great. It's about getting better at feeling. And when we do that, we end up creating a greater state of peace, love, and joy.
Yeah, we do have a choice there, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day, the choices we make will dictate the results we may see in or out of our lives. And I think that so many of those decisions can be stacked. One bad decision becomes another bad decision. And so you're talking about the choice of acknowledging that it's probably a good idea to slow down, and it's not a horrible thing. Something that as we get older gets a little bit easier, but something when you're young is very difficult to do.
Yeah. And it comes down to that acceptance. Most of the time, our friction comes from because we're not accepting the current state. And this could be from the injury. I could have been fantasizing about all the adventures I could have been doing. Instead, I just need to accept and go, this is where I'm at right now, and what do I need to focus on? Also happens in business all the time. People fantasize about what the business could have been or what it looks like, and they haven't realized that the market has changed. The dynamics have changed, and your business, it's not true. You're not going to be that type of business. Now, if you keep allowing that fantasy to continue, eventually you have to face reality, and then the fear creeps in. And that's where it's almost, whoa, what's happening? But instead, if you just do a constant reset and go, all right, where are we at right now? What do we need to do? This is truth. Then you'll make better decisions in that moment, and you won't compound that mistake. That's the key. And we've both been investment professionals. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they literally anchor off previous investment decisions, and they see the stock price goes down by 50%, and then all they care about is getting back to that same share price before. But the investment thesis is completely gone. Capital is capital. Today, if you had that amount of capital, maybe it's gone from $1,000 down to $500, would you choose to invest that $500 in that current investment? And if you started fresh, they would be, no, not a chance. However, because they have that anchoring of what it wants to be, they're so focused on trying to get back to 1,000, they won't accept that current state. And then we just keep compounding mistake after mistake after mistake. And before you know it, one tiny little mistake ends up being this catastrophic experience.
We fall in love with the wrong part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, you fall in love with the wrong part of the story. We're too engaged in the story itself that we told ourselves from the beginning, and not the one that's happening right in front of us. And it's something you said something earlier that I really liked, and that is sometimes we focus so much on what we don't have that we're not able to see what we do right in front of us. Right before we came on, I sent a text to one of my son's best friends, and he's going out to a big soccer showcase this weekend, and it's an all-star type of event. And I just said, hey, I want you to focus on what you do great, not what you're not doing as well as you'd like. And I want you to truly be grateful for where you are, what you're doing now, and where you're at in this moment. And part of it is just from learned lessons, because I was living in that gap for so long. I was living in that, okay, if we just do this, then we'll have that. And if we have that, then we can do this. And so much of that is that gratitude, and gratitude centers you immediately. It makes you look immediately at what you have now, and it allows you to feel so much better about where you're at. And it lets life come to you. Ultimately, what we're talking about is it's coming to you, not moving away from you and you trying to grab at it or tell it a story.
Yeah, when you put yourself into gratitude, you elevate your vibrational frequency, and by that nature, what you said, you allow it to come through. You become an attractive field for that. You become magnetic. And the challenge is, if we never acknowledge that present moment and what's going well, it doesn't matter how good your life becomes. If you keep always focusing on there could be something better, nothing will ever fulfill you. And then you're just in that game of the illusion of when I get this, when this will occur, I'll feel great. And the problem with when is it either never comes because you just actually, your fantasies were too big, or it comes and then the illusion comes crashing down because you're just literally like, oh, it didn't give me what it wanted. Or you just keep pushing the next when as well. You get there, and then by the time you're there, you've already focused on the next thing. So you never actually get to experience life. You're just living in this phantom present, this constant in between, the gap, as you said. So the practice is what's true right now. And if people started focusing on what is true right now, they would realize they're living a lot better life than they really recognize. We are in a very abundant place of life. We have so many opportunities. We have access to people. And I'm practicing that right now, is going for just 10-minute walks each day and just doing gratitude walks of just all the things that are just flowing into our life. And what's amazing about it, it also starts attracting the things that you don't have without trying. It's really interesting. Like more things start flowing into your life because you're in that attractor field.
Yeah, the clarity is so much easier when you're in a positive energy state. I'm constantly talking about the energy in the world that we want is what we have to put out. I am the energy that I receive. So if I want positive energy, I need to put that out into the world. And so many of the times we're focused on the other things. When you talk about this next chapter of your life, you help a lot of people. You've been focused on helping others be more present, finding breath, being in a moment of peace and joy, and finding that emotional state of positivity. How are you practicing that, or what are you doing to prepare yourself for this next chapter with your son when he comes into the world?
Yeah, so one is actual preparation. That's a good question. So I get asked a lot, what are you most excited about with your son coming into the world? And there's a number of things. I can't wait to see my partner just in her power. She already has been in a complete power through the pregnancy, and just another level of witnessing creation, that miracle happening. One, to see him, obviously. I'm just like, all right, what did we create together? And then the next is, what can I learn from him? So rather than thinking I'm teaching him, I actually dedicated my book to my next spiritual teacher, which I do believe is him, and go, what am I learning? And part of that is I'm really excited to see what buttons he presses with me. I'm a pretty calm, collected, responsive rather than reacting person. And I can't wait for that moment where I lose myself and go, oh, thank you. Whoa, that was an interesting experience. So there's a few things with the presence. So I'm preparing the aftermath. So we already have a preparation plan that when we go through the birth, we're going to send out a message to people, and then I'm turning my phone off, and we're going to have a 10-day experience lockdown, because it's just so easy to just miss that moment. If people just messaging me and I get caught up with other things, I want to be so immersed with that. Now that requires a lot of preparation, and it's very scary and very confronting. However, I'm making sure that that's a possibility. And I'm also reflecting on, okay, how do I become even more focused with my energy? So making sure that my energy is going to the people I love the most, and the creations that I'm focused on, and I'm not just sending it out everywhere. Now that requires a lot of boundaries, which is something I struggle with. I pride myself that I really show up for people. And when people ask me for help, I'm there. I'm now identifying that my capacity, my desire is outweighing my capacity. There's actually a finite ability. And a lot of people are asking me for help and different experiences. And now I'm trying to work out, okay, how do I do this in a way that is sustainable for everyone, and I'm not hurting myself or hurting my loved ones by doing that? That requires hard conversations. It also means I get a little bit more strategic. Like, that was one of the reasons why I wrote the book. Now, if someone's in trouble, I'm like, go read the book and then we'll have a conversation. I have my app for that reason, where I can give different resources. However, there will be times where I feel like I have to let people down. And that's my work that I'm doing, my coaches right now, for myself, to identify how do I move through that. Because otherwise, all I'm going to do is hurt myself, and I'm not going to be able to show up for others anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very difficult. The more successful you become, the more you have to get comfortable with saying no. Mm-hmm. And the more uncomfortable you are with saying no, because you know how much you can help and how easy it would be. Sometimes it's a simple text, it's a simple, conversation, but it's still output of energy. And if you're doing that over and over again, it's very challenging. And to your point about the presence of your state with your son, and like being there 10 days after, the interesting thing about, I have two sons, and the first one, I remember, I'll never forget the moment that, he came into the world, and, and we're both like just in this absolute, great space. Like nothing else mattered in that moment. And it was almost like the most beautiful thing you could ever see. And also in some ways, some of the not most beautiful thing you've ever seen, but it's gorgeous, right? And I remember the whole moment of him coming into the world. My second son, what I remember more than anything is the sunset as we drove to the hospital. So what was really interesting is it was a completely different experience. There was a peace. There was like, we've been through this. We know what we're doing. Everything's going to be fine. And you know how beautiful it's going to be, but you also know that it's going to come with all these other things so you're kind of almost hanging on to time a little bit differently because you know that it's going to move fast. And so it's the beauty of being a parent is you do try to be better than you viewed your parents, but you also have a lens you never had before, which is the one where you realize the imperfection of parenthood.
Totally.
And the moments that you talked about that you're challenged, there'll be moments you show up just like them and you're disappointed in yourself. And there'll be moments where you show up just like them and you're proud of yourself. And then there are moments where you do something completely different, or they teach us something that we didn't anticipate. And no one will be able to see you as well as they see you. And I think that's also one of the hardest things, is that we view our parents through a lens of perfection, and they view parenthood from a lens of imperfection. And so when you start to have your kids, and now mine are 15 and 18, the beautiful moment he came into the world, the other one in the beautiful sunset, now they are the quickest to point out all of your shortcomings and everything. And they're not wrong. Most of the time, they're not wrong. They might have a version of you that's not perfect, but the reality is it is this really cool vibe that you get to live in, and there's really not a whole lot else that matters once you get into there. It makes priorities a little bit easier because you realize what is the most important thing.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things I want to address. Like, I've studied a lot about the baby effect with entrepreneurs for many years. About a lot of entrepreneurs have had the greatest success after their baby because it just did focus priorities and the energy was very different. So I'm excited of that as well. And then the second was that concept of savoring. I really got a beautiful visceral response when I imagined that sunset on the way. Rather than focusing on, oh, I can't wait to get this baby out into the world, you were like, well, this is a moment I'll never get back again. I'm never going to be a father of one child ever again. I'm a father of 2 children right now. So let's savor that experience. And we're witnessing that right now as well. There's so many people who are so focused on, well, you must be excited to get the baby out. And we're like, yeah, we are. But right now we're loving this. We'll never have this time again. Just myself and my partner. It's never going to be us again, ever again. And so we're really honoring that moment. We did that before the conception as well. But most people we're trained from a young age, especially with the education system. It's, oh, when I get through that, I'm going to enjoy it. What about just right now? Let's really resonate in this experience. So we can do that in any way. We could do that with our food. Savor that next mouthful and just really chew it for 40 chews rather than just quickly gulping it down. Savor that cup of tea. Savor this connection with this person. And how much more rich would life be if we savored every single moment?
Yeah, it was a lot easier for me because the first one, I think I was so panicked at how we were going to get by. Because it was such a different thing. We're in our early 20s. We're just starting our lives, and we're nowhere near where we expected to be. Mm-hmm. You know, at least where I expeced us to be.
Yes, that's the danger.
It was me.
Yourself.
It was my expectation of myself, which was so high and so strong. And I remember I was actually hosting a big event that night. I had a huge educational seminar event with the most people that had ever signed up to come in my life. I mean, I was begging people to show up to these for months and months. And all of a sudden I was just like, everyone signed up and it's 4:00 and my wife calls me, firstborn, and she says, hey, I think we probably need to get ready to go. And I'm like, are you sure? Because I have this event at 6. If it's not going to be, I remember I'm coercing her. Yes. And her mom came on and said, hey, it's time to go. And I said, yes, ma'am, I'm coming. So the sunset to me was also, you said something about your son potentially being one of your greatest teachers. And, just parenthood in general has been such a growth moment in my life, to see the difference that 2 short years can make in how you receive something, and how much more open you are to learning, or surrendering to what's coming, not just what you envision, but truly just in that moment. And I think that's most entrepreneurs, most people that listen to this show struggle with this. They struggle with that presence. They struggle, forget the parenthood. It's whatever you're doing. It's very difficult to truly savor, as you say, in that moment where you're at. And there's moments where you do, but then there's several moments in your day where you just kind of glide through and you just like knock it by it's too fast for you.
Yeah, I really connected to when you corrected yourself and went, oh, the expectations of myself, or the vision of this. And I think about that a lot, because I love visioning, and visioning is powerful, and it's great to create in life. However, visions have hurt me a lot as well. I've caused a lot of pain to myself because of some vision that I've become attached to, and I either didn't achieve it, or I kept going on that path even though it wasn't true to myself. So I'm always playing that scenario out. What's a vision that potentially I need to let go of right now? And what's a vision that I've become too attached to? And sometimes I like to go through phases, and this is one of them right now, is maybe I've done enough visioning for my life. What if I just started living and accepting this present moment and trust that the visions to come forward? But I've become so addicted to visioning, it feels uncomfortable to do that. And part of the reason why I became addicted to visioning is a lot of the time it was to escape from the present moment. And that's the dance we have to play with when we're actually being honest with ourselves, is why do you need that vision? Are you not trusting? Are you not accepting? And I'm curious if there's anything that comes up for you in your life right now where you're doing that again to yourself, where you're having too higher expectations of yourself, or you're going, oh, I'm a little bit too attached to this vision at the cost of other things.
Yeah, we talked in the beginning of the show where I just kind of gave you a little bit of information about life, love, impact, faith, and energy. And where that came from was exactly what you're talking about. So much in my life, I'd want to visualize where I wanted to go, but I found myself visualizing only where I wanted to go from a work perspective. And I was so driven on what I was doing that the only box I was working on was this box. And so I started to define these categories so that I would brain dump in each of those categories the most important things that were attached to the people that I love. The most important things that were attached to work, but then beyond work. Why was I doing it? Like I would ask myself if the who box is love, I would go into impact and I would start, and that's the what box, right? And I would say, who is involved in this? Why are they involved in it? Why am I involved in it? And how am I going to execute upon it? And I started brain dumping in those categories, and that started to ground me and center me on what my goals were. And then I would go through and prioritize by circling the most important categories and where was I imbalanced. And so that was a tool I use and still teach today. Every day I use it and every day I teach it. But it's something that I believe in so that it keeps me from getting too far lost into the future. There has to be a little bit of a surrender. And this is where the why box comes in, so the spirituality, the something bigger than ourselves. It's got to have something that stands out, because then I can surrender to just allow myself to live. But that's a very difficult thing for me. So I don't know if there's one thing that I'm holding on to right now, but I can tell you that it's something that I have to work on all the time, because I see 5, 10, 20 years into the future with every conversation I have.
Yeah, it's a great tool you have, and you use the right word ground you. Because what often happened is we are measuring ourselves against one variable, and we measure ourselves against the easy variables. It's so much easier to measure your net worth because it's numbers than the impact you're having on the world or the connections in your relationships. So what happens is we default to that one place. Same with our weight, for example. It's a very easy one to track our weight. And we succumb to thinking that we are living a really horrible life, or we're not doing well because that one place has not gone well. And I created a very similar tool from that same place where I'd always made money and it was always an upward trajectory. And then, as what happens in the business world and financial world, one year I had completely the opposite direction. And I got into a negative spiral because I'd associated my worth to my net worth, and I started thinking I wasn't doing great, and I was just basically starting to free fall, completely free fall. And I went, this isn't sustainable. So then I actually did an honest inventory of my life. And if you looked at everything in my life that year, it was actually a pretty good year. But I couldn't see that because I was focusing on this one experience. So what I realized was I can't trust myself. I can't trust my own judgment in that experience. And I needed some form of grounding tool to pull me back in line. And when we do that, what ends up happening goes back to energy. We start feeling more calm, more peace, more grounded. And then we can make better decisions because we're coming from a more open, more love-based place. And then naturally what occurs is you don't keep the free fall going. You course correct and you make the decisions what you need to actually get yourself out of that financial situation. So it's in our best interests to not focus on the one number, focus on the totality, and then that one number by byproduct will naturally increase as well.
Can you walk our listeners through your process? I know it's more extensive, but just the overview. A lot of people will want to look up more of what you do, how you do it. I had someone who texted me on Saturday morning after going for a 4-mile walk, and they said, I just listened to one of your podcasts, and I just bought the guy's book, and I'm following what he's doing. I'm just super interested. So I know people listen because this gives them the cliff notes. But what are some of the key components? Obviously, we want them to reach out and get the Intentionality book, and this is a great way to do it. But just walk through a little bit of your system or your processes or whatever you think is most valuable for the listeners to understand about your process.
Certainly. So the book is Intentionality, and I define intentionality in simplest terms to be identifying how you want to feel and then taking incremental steps towards making that a reality. Now, there's 5 key intentions that I talk about in the book, and the master key is to prioritize feelings over outcomes. Now, that might all be challenging people because we're addicted to goals and metrics, and we think, well, feelings, what are feelings? Feelings are liabilities. There's no place for feelings in business, which is just a complete lie because we're not robots. We are human beings, and by nature, we are emotional-based beings. We make 95% plus of our decisions from an emotional instinct. So the idea that we make logical decisions, we're kidding ourselves. So the quicker we start realizing that feelings are driving all our decisions and start prioritizing, the better we'll be. The other reason why we want to prioritize feelings over outcomes are feelings you can make a progress to them right now. You don't have to wait for some arbitrary time in the future in order to achieve the outcome. And why is it that we want the outcome? Is because we hope it gives us a feeling. That's the only reason why we want any outcome. Every goal will always be related to a feeling. So the challenge of that is one, as we know, we don't always achieve our goals. So then you've created a scenario that you can't get your feeling unless you get that goal. So you've limited yourself. Another reason is that sometimes we get it wrong. We think that goal is going to give us a feeling, and it doesn't. And we have to wait 10 years to find that out. So instead, let's flip that and go, okay, we know instantaneously whether something gives us a feeling or takes us away from a feeling. That's just naturally. Just like the same with energy, we know whether something gives us energy or takes away our energy. So making that the forefront of our decision making, it creates more flexibility, more fluidity. It also enables us to move in the present moment. So you might start going, okay, what are some core feelings that I want to feel? And that's where I have 5 core priorities where I link into that. I want to feel love. That's my highest feeling. I then want to make sure that I'm growing each day. I'm learning. So every challenge, I don't see it as a problem. I see it as like, great, a moment of growth. I want to make sure that I feel I'm serving, giving back to the world. I want to be making sure that I have a lot of play. I'm enjoying. I'm taking this totality of the human experience. And then I want to make sure that I'm creating some form of whatever I'm creating out in the world. And if I live in line with that, and I make decisions each day going, okay, are the behaviors that I'm doing leading towards those feelings? I'm going to get a quick resonance with it. And before I know it, I will be in an incredible state because I'm doing the things right now that lead more to that. So that's really what I focus on. And all you have to do is, people go, well, how do you do this? Just set an intention each day. Wake up in the morning and go, what do I want to feel? And then imagine yourself going throughout the day, and at the end of the day, you walk away with those feelings. What did you need to do in order to get those feelings? When you communicated with your partner, how did you need to communicate in order to feel connected? If you interacted with your team members, what are the things you needed to do? Did you need to work out? Whatever it is. And by the nature of that, you won't have to really make choices anymore. It becomes very clear. Either this behavior leads to that feeling or not. So it actually saves a lot of wasted energy because you now show up in integrity, in the correct place. And then at the end of the day, you do a reflection and go, how did I go against my intention? What did I bring those feelings forward? What took away from those feelings? If I had my opportunity again, what would I do differently? Because the magical thing is tomorrow you do have another opportunity. And if we start realizing that life isn't so permanent, and it's not so binary, it's a progression, life just becomes a lot easier. So often we think that we've ruined something, and I'm like, no, you can fix that. Just acknowledge it. Just go share that with that person. And humans are the most forgiving creatures out there, as long as they're acknowledged. And that act of prioritizing feelings over outcomes, before you know it, your life will be extraordinary.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's great. And it's the categories that you've chosen are so empowering in any cause anyway. You're talking about love and growth and creativity, and I mean these are some of the most important things. Period. I've always prioritized love. I've always prioritized impact, faith, and energy. But even like in the last many years, formulating them at a different level, paying attention to them at a different level, growing within each of the categories, like understanding it. And I think that's something obviously that you'll teach. Talk to me about the power of breath. I've seen this referenced in your book. I know it's important to you. You teach this stuff. I'm just interested and intrigued by that as well. If you have any, because I think I like to give the listeners a wide scope of the cool things that our guests are doing and how they're doing it. And I definitely want you to mention your retreat and kind of what you do there. So walk us through those two things, and that way I can make sure everybody's getting all of Finnian that they need.
Certainly. So we've already identified that most of our decisions are based off emotional instincts. And that's because our subconscious determines 95% of our automatic behaviors and thoughts and feelings. And they were originally created through a felt perception. That's how the subconscious took on a program, a direction, was from a strong emotion. Now, we also know that a lot of our challenges in life come from our reactionary behaviors. We suddenly find ourselves being short with someone, or shutting down, or eating the unhealthy food without consciously thinking. Why that is because the subconscious is the automatic program. That's the reactionary, and it just sets off this program. The practice of becoming conscious is to be aware of what subconscious behaviors are driving the less desirable outcomes in our life. And the way to do that is to suspend in the present moment and observe the behavior. And the way to do that is to utilize the breath. When we take a breath, we become super present and we drop in that moment. And what happens is for this split, like 1/10,000th of a second, we have this moment to observe what is the automatic behavior that's about to go. And do I really want to do that automatic behavior? I know where that goes, and it doesn't lead to the desired feelings. It causes conflict or anything. And that the breath suspends us between conscious awareness and subconscious awareness, and then we have the opportunity to override consciously the automatic program. When we don't take the breath, it's already just, it's happening. It just goes. So the breath is the liberation for us. It's the freedom. If we become super present with our breath, we realize that we're not just our thoughts. There's something else. There's an awareness of the thoughts. We also enable an intelligence to come through us because we're connecting to this universal mind or this unified field of energy, which can only happen when we're connected to the subconscious as well. So that's the power of the breath. It sort of slows everything down. We can also use the breath to change our energetic state anytime. We're feeling low energy, we can do an up-regulated breath and we can suddenly get new energy. Energy isn't finite like time. You never have to be constrained by energy. We can also go, oh, I'm feeling really stressed and I'm losing myself and I'm about to make some bad decisions. We can elongate the breath out, slow down the breath, and activate our parasympathetic nervous system. And when we do that, it calms ourselves down, it reminds ourselves that we're not actually in a survival threat. And when that happens, blood flow goes back from the limbs, back into our heart and our brain, and we make better decisions. So it's our responsibility to constantly keep observing what energetic state are we in. Observe the breath. The breath is the cue. Anytime a stimulus comes from the outside world, two things will occur. Our breath will change and there'll be a sensation in our body. Most of the time, we're not paying attention to this. So if I observe my breath and I see that it's really short and shallow, it's a clue that something has stimulated me and put me into a fear-based place. And if I'm not aware that I'm in a fear-based place when I'm about to go in and lead a team or make a decision or do a deal, I might not realize that I'm about to do destruction and cause a lot of problems. I'm either going to be really short with people or I'm going to miss the cue of the opportunity in that deal. So we need to check in and go, all right, I've been stimulated. The great thing is I don't have to stay in that state. I can then use the breath to get myself back into a more calm state. So effectively, it's the cue, it's the clue of where we're at. It's the ability to change your state anytime you want. And that's something which I wish people knew more of, is that you don't have to accept your current state. You don't have to be that place. The physiological changes the psychological, just as the psychological changes the physiological. If your breath is very short, and then I get you to just imagine yourself in that beautiful moment where you just felt so much love or peace and just went to that place in your life, instantly your breath would just calm. Because the mind can't tell the difference between something really happening or in your imagination. So that tells me that why would you allow your imagination to do harm to yourself? Just imagine something different. We really do have flexibility. And that's why people just think, oh, I'm just a naturally happy person. And I'm like, no, I understand the tools. I'm aware and I'm constantly self-regulating myself to pull myself back in that place. And it's not because of anyone else. It's because I've learned that life is more enjoyable when I'm in this state. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have moments of sadness and anger. I don't try to avoid them. I honor them. But I also know the more you integrate them, the quicker they release as well. So it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy of how you become in this energetic state.
Any tools that you recommend, any external tools that help people with the breath? Anything that you like to recommend? I know people are constantly looking for maybe apps that help them or guidance in any capacity.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually have an app, the Intentionality app, which has a list of all these different breaths, and I call them circuit breakers. These little breaths that stop the energy from the outside world from coming in and short-circuiting your system. Because you know those times where you suddenly lose yourself and you're like, whoa, what happened to myself? That's because we didn't regulate our own energy. So we can activate these circuit breakers to protect us, to protect our own energetic circuit. So that's one really powerful way. And once you learn these, you then program them into you, so then you don't even have to think about them. I now know when I get stimulated, I'll find myself doing the perfect breath, which is a breath of 5.5 seconds in through the nose and 5.5 seconds out. What's interesting about that, nature has this interesting phenomenon. So if you do that, it ends up being 5.5 breaths per minute. And it also means you intake 5.5 liters of air in that minute. So there's a repetitive pattern there. So whenever I find myself getting a little bit stimulated, I just start paying attention to my breath. 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. Another beautiful tool that I do is called the concentration breath, where if there's too much going on and I can't concentrate, I start following the breath, just observing what my breath is. I then start rubbing my thumb and my fingers together very slowly at the same time as paying attention to my breath. So I feel two different sensations at once. And then I start rubbing the tongue on the roof of my mouth as I'm paying attention to breath and I'm paying attention to my fingers. And if you just try that right now, Scott, we could all do that in literally 2 seconds. We're paying attention to all three things. And right now, you can't go into a reactionary environment. I could yell at you right now and you'd just be like, I'm invincible. And so I do that all the time. And it's just a natural calming remedy. And if I don't do that, what ends up happening is so much stimulation comes in and then my energy goes and I lose myself. And I can't afford to do that anymore. I need to make sure that I'm present. And as you know, as you're running a business, parenting, partner, we can't afford our energy to deplete so much. And it comes back to really self-agency to go, are you taking responsibility for your energy? Because if you don't, then who is? Other people are just taking it freely or driving different scenarios in your life which aren't conducive to you. Only you can be responsible for your energy.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So walk us through how people can get more of what you do and how you do it. And they can be the kind of clients and people that you want to actually help, accelerate in life. So I know that the book, Intentionality, A Groundbreaking Guide to Breath, Consciousness, and Radical Self-Transformation by Finnian Kelly is in everywhere that you can buy a book. I know I got it on Amazon in literally 24 hours or less. So that's a great thing. But what are some of the other ways they can connect with you and maybe the app and the other things that you're doing?
Great. So if you go to intentionality.com, that's where you'll find the book and the app. And I've created these because I want people to have a felt experience. We don't get transformation through understanding through the intellect. That just doesn't work. We can read everything about how to lose weight, but until we actually do the behaviors, we're not going to lose the weight. So we need to transition from understanding to knowing, and the only way to do that is to have a felt experience. So you'll notice in the book, I'm not just teaching content, you have to apply it straight away. You'll be suddenly going, oh, wow, I'm applying this breath. It's very interesting. And the audio book has me guiding it as well. The app is a support mechanism there. So first I would just say, start with the low-hanging fruit. Try those things on. Then if that feels really great, then you could explore, well, if you have a company, I do transformational experiences with companies where I'll work with the founder and then I will lead their company offsite and then I'll do their annual kickoff in that sort of experience. And it's incorporating the intentionality methodology. But I want people to try it first, because once you try it, you'll get direct evidence and then you will start believing more. And then the more you believe, the more you just step in and lean in and you'll create the transformation from that belief. A lot of people want to jump to the end, and it's just try one little practice. And I'm always curious. I'm active on social media on the Finnian Kelly. And if you tell me, oh, wow, I had this experience with the breath, or this is something that's challenging me, I'll dialogue with you. And that's the best way to start any relationship, is just to create a relationship, just communicate with each other.
That's great. So Finnian Kelly doing fun things, big things, living each day 1 second at a time, or 5 seconds in the full breath. I'm so honored to have had you on the show. It's fun to learn from you. The book is great. Pick it up for sure. And most importantly, good luck being a dad, man. I think that's super fun time in your life, and new chapter, all new things. The next book will be even more interesting than the last because it'll have a new layer of dramatic vision.
Thank you so much, Scott. You're a great inspiration, and I'm very, very happy where I'm at. I'm also excited about the journey too.
Sounds good. Thanks for being a part of the show. We're clear. All right, man. That was awesome, dude. I'm excited for you. It's gonna be great.
Thank you. That was exactly 1 hour, by the way. I was like,
oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, dude.
You were like incredible.
I have like this internal clock, man. There's
crossed,
so many things.
Literally, as you said, like 10000. It was so trippy.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. You know what? I pay attention a little bit, but I mainly want to make sure that I'm mindful of time because I know how busy we all are. And if we start to bleed into each other's time, then it gets really hard to actually do what we talked about doing,
Definitely.
which is sacrificing certain things. But, dude, we'll cut a ton of this stuff up and get it out to you. We'll share anything you need. We'll make sure that you have. I'm actually going to stop the recording now so it uploads while we're finishing. If you like clips like this, make sure you click here to see the full interview and the full video.
Lead in with, so if you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. If you want to watch this full interview, click here. You don't have to point anywhere.
Okay. If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.